All fair in love and snacks. The gaping maw of fate hovered by, unknown to the little furry creature that skittered about happily. Yet before the innocent youngster knew what had happened, monstrous jaws held him tightly in their grasp. I, too, was stunned. But then I leapt to the other side of the blue swivel chair and grabbed my cat by the back of the neck. She growled, warning me away from her prey, but I whapped her on top of the head and she dropped my fuzzy friend. He lay there on the brown carpet in a near motionless little ball, his blonde fur matted with saliva. He was stunned, or worse, and didn't try to run as I shooed the cat away. He only lay there panting in short gasps. I scooped my gerbil up to examine him closer. His back left leg had been bitten, and though only a little bit of blood showed, his weak and feeble attempts at moving were hampered by his injury. He had escaped instant death by broken spine or injury to the internal organs, but shock and pain could be fatal enough, if not by themselves, then by a secondary infection. But since gerbils groom themselves and each other, any solution placed on the fur would poison them on the inside, so he had to heal naturally. Chomper was the smartest cat my husband had ever known. Scary smart. Now she stood staring at me, and I could read behind her eyes disappointment at losing her prize. There were many pleasures in living with the Einstein of cats, but one fairly major drawback, too. As if to compensate for her uncat-like intelligence and very lithe build, she gravitated to the wilds with a stubborn desire to out-hunt the most feral of beasts. No act of human discipline could dissuade her. In short, she was a terror to all animals. She brought in beasts great and small, but she was never too proud to aim her skills at our own menagerie of pets. Gerbils, voles, rabbits, they were all hers by right. At least that was her opinion. I looked at her now, not with tenderness and affection, but with a horror. We had a special bond, we two, but I wasn't feeling it right then. She was remorseless in the hunt, and she saw no difference between the creatures behind glass and the ones in the woods, except that the ones in glass were harder to get to, and her feline mind grasped quite readily her humans were not pleased with her when she sought these luscious morsels. Her humans did not understand the true role of these skittering, tempting, and tweeping meals. In fact, she had to be careful hunting them because if one of her tall ones saw her, then she would get doused in water. And being wet was very annoying. Today she had been ready for some juicy, furry food on a platter, and there it had been for the taking. But her human got in the way. This puzzled her, for she had tried her best to teach these silly humans how to eat properly. Didn't she bring in prey for them to practice on? Mice, voles, rabbits, birds, all that work, and she gifted them even without nibbling on them first. Why, she had even brought in a lovely live owl once, and that was annoying bringing a bird bigger than her through that little cat door. They threw that owl back outside, even though it was flying around all ready to hunt. These ungrateful humans didn't know the first thing about proper adulting. To make it worse, after throwing all of that food away, they kept perfectly good snacks inside, in little glass boxes. And then they got mad at her when she learned to unscrew their lids. Instead of letting her have the snacks, they dumped water on her. Well, today she didn't get the food, but she didn't get wet either, so it wasn't a total failure. I could picture her thinking these things as she gave a tired sigh. That was her "bless your heart, but I forgive your ignorance" expression. She would give it when exasperated, and she got over being mad. I know that cats aren't as self-aware as humans, but Chomper seemed close as she calmly licked a paw and rubbed it over the brown tiger-stripe fur of her cheek. I could hear her think in the silence, "Oh, well, it's only a matter of time." I didn't have animals around when I was a kid, so naturally I was enamored of them as an adult. My husband had grown up with all sorts of hoofed, furred, and feathered creatures in his rural childhood. He loved them still, and so he indulged me. We got Chomper as a kitten from the local animal shelter. She was my first cat, and I was entranced by the small, warm ball of fuzz. She had picked me over every other human at the open house, demanding to be put back into my arms and chew on my thumb. She was a one-person cat, and I was her person. After her, we soon increased our menagerie with more cats, fish, logomorphs, and the adorable kinds of rodents. My first two gerbils were a pair given to me by my husband on my birthday. The female had a ticked brown coat commonly called agouti coloring, whilst the male had the less common color of pale blonde. We named them Punch and Goody. They were playful, affectionate with each other, and liked people. I loved them, and it was Punch who now laid panting and injured, looking small and fragile in my large primate hand. Guilt took over my thoughts as I placed Punch's trembling body into a nest of shavings. If only I had kept the gerbils in the cage instead of playing with them. If only I had noticed Chomper sneaking in earlier, and had not thought she finally learned her lesson at approaching my other pets. But, I conceded, who expects their cat to literally take a gerbil out of your very hand? Surely that kind of hunting ferocity was only capable of by a very determined Chomper. I touched my hand to the cold, slippery glass of the gerbil cage as I bent down to look closely. Goody poked her head out of a nest she had made at the other end of the cage, and sniffed the air with quick whisker-twitching breaths. She crawled out to stand on her hind legs, then looked at her mate laying in discomfort, please, not pain, on top of the shavings. She hopped over to him and put her nose right next to his, looking closely, almost as though whispering to him. Then she put out a small fingered paw and rested it softly on his shoulder. I held my breath at the scene. It was a terrible habit to apply human standards to animal behavior, but here there seemed no mistaking it. Goody cared for Punch very much and was determined to take care of him. I pulled up a chair and sat in front of the cage watching, and I watched for days as Goody nursed Punch back to health. She waited with him as he caught his breath those first frightful minutes. Then she helped him walk slowly back to their nest together. He plopped down, exhausted, and slept and slept and slept. Punch didn't move much. I feared with him not eating or drinking. But though I despaired, Goody never gave up. She brought him tidbits of food, both kibble and the choice bits of fresh vegetables I tossed in so he could get moisture. She groomed him, she rubbed him like a massage, she fussed over her mate with a single-minded intensity that I never thought possible with such a small brain, and when she finally took a break fussing, she slept right next to him, snuggled close and ready to wake at his slightest stir. Whether it was luck in his accident that brought him to health again, or my treatment of good food and vitamins, or, more likely, the love and attention of his mate, I don't know. But he recovered so well he didn't even limp when he played, and was as devoted and attentive to his mate as she was to him. They taught me something about love, those two gerbils. They showed what it meant to love a mate. They lived to be very old and content gerbils, together. If you ask me, it's love that makes the living worth it, and I think Punch and Goody knew it too. Written by Sherry Haight, narrated by Listen AI.